I never liked the acoustics in the St. Leonard's Church Hall, not even when I was a child playing hide and seek along the splintered pews. But on the afternoon that broke me, the echo seemed almost designed for scorn, a vast, musty room focused on making every muttered doubt and laugh ring twice as loud. Maybe that's why they always held the family meeting in there once a year. Tradition, of course. And tradition has an uncanny knack for ganging up on people. It was raining outside, thin British drizzle pausing on each window pane before sliding down in cold streaks. Inside, the fluorescent lights made everyone's faces look grey and damp, as if the very air had trained to reflect disappointment. My family clustered in tight knots, Grandad near the urn of watery tea, my cousins in a row like defence lawyers, aunties parked beneath the creaky no smoking sign, as if daring anyone to stop them from picking at what or who they pleased. I was 23, which was too old to be the baby, too young to be listened to. Everyone knew what was coming, that had become obvious the moment I'd turned down the job at Uncle Roy's accounting firm. That was the spark. I'd said the quiet parts aloud. I want to be a data artist. I want to create with algorithms, make art that moves with the world's numbers. And instead of a ripple of support, all I got was the drafty silence of disbelief. Mum tried, I'll give her that. She patted the seat next to her, lips pressed but hopeful. Just say you're still thinking about it, she whispered, eyes flickering anxiously to Uncle Roy's sharp profile. I wasn't ungrateful. I just couldn't lie, so I stood when my name was called, my knees bumping the folding chair and making a noise loud enough for cousin Janine to snicker into her sleeve. Arnie, Uncle Roy said, he never added my second syllable unlike everyone else. Your mum says you've got something to tell us, but I've been hearing things already, want to clear them up. I tried to breathe in, fill my lungs with something sturdy. Yes, I've decided I'm not going to work at the firm. I'm building a career as a data artist. I visualize data, create installations and, well, installations, Aunt Fiona cut in, voice sugary as cough syrup, like putting up shelves, dear. Polite laughter. Someone said, modern art is it? With a swerve on the word art that made my cheeks burn, my voice trembled. It's not the same thing. I code interactive pieces, use statistics and patterns too. So computers. But not for a real job then, said Grandad, the final authority. He eyed me as if I was trying to sell him Facebook in 1970. Roy's mouth twisted into that management smile. And what will you eat? You planning to print money on your little computer as well? Aunt Fiona nodded as if this was the punchline. A sudden spurt of laughter followed, a release of tension at last. It's not ridiculous, Uncle Roy, I managed. The world is made of data. Art can show people what numbers mean. Banks show me what numbers mean weekly, he said, laughter again harder this time. He sipped his tea, dismissing me. Janine stood up, fully invested in the family meeting tradition of kicking the odd duck. You do you, cousin, but don't expect a GoFundMe when you want heating next winter. She tossed her hair back. Ridiculous. Auntie Sarah, who'd once showed me embroidery stitches and who I'd naively hoped would stay silent, finally said, you'll be back when you've had your fun. London's an expensive way to learn sense. Grandad made it official. We're proud of you when you're ready to join us in the world. Until then, don't embarrass your mother. The embarrassment, as it turns out, was mine to pocket. When I sat, Mum plucked tissues from her purse and folded them into my hand, stiff, lemon-scented, useless. Afterwards, in the dark drizzle, she caught up with me under an overgrown cherry tree. You're clever, Arnie, but pay the rent first, right? Just promise me, no more making enemies. I didn't promise. For days after, I replayed that echoey gauntlet in the church hall, each comment landing heavier than it had in the room. I doubted myself. I wanted to stop. But every time I tried to imagine my hands entering numbers into rows and columns in Uncle Roy's windowless office, my skin itched. So I chose the harder thing. I moved into a shared flat in Bethnal Green with 2 night shift nurses who never emptied the bins, but who, crucially, never mocked anyone's dreams. I worked at a coffee shop with Wi-Fi so slippery and unreliable it felt like a test. Do you want your art bad enough to refresh the connection every 15 minutes? I made art anyway. I wrote code at 2 in the morning, squinting at the screen, trying to make numbers bloom into color, shapes pulse with meaning. Sometimes I would stare out over the rooftops, the city reduced to a grid of orange squares, and whisper the names of famous data artists like prayers. But mostly I failed. My first 3 projects landed nowhere, the email inbox filled with "we regret to inform you." Occasionally the emails addressed me as Miss Bartholomew or Dear Sir. Those made me laugh in a way that hurt. Rent was always late. Mum left anxious voicemails so often I stopped checking them. Time passed. Seasons scuffed the windows. There was a time when my mother didn't answer every call on the first ring, and when I saw Janine's wedding photos on Facebook without an invitation, I drew the circle of silence a little smaller. My world changed shape. Flatmates came and went. Gallery owners smiled faintly but pointed towards the door. Bills became red letters became threats. I got tougher, I got quieter, but I didn't stop. There was something in the process itself that felt real. I would walk through the city and gather data like fallen leaves, a week's worth of bus arrivals, the pulse of morning rain over the Thames, heartbeat data volunteered by strangers at pop-up stalls. I built sprawling, messy installations in borrowed spaces, a wall that pulsed with London Underground frequencies, a chandelier of LED lights that mapped tube delays as twinkling frustration. A sculpture of old phone screens displaying the rise and fall of childhood asthma in the city's postcodes. No one paid for these, but a few people came. One night in a freezing warehouse near Old Street, a woman stayed late after everyone else had gone, standing in front of my airscape installation, a silent field of glass tubes, each one glowing with real-time local air quality data. She looked stricken. "My son's got asthma," she said. "I didn't know it was like this." I explained it to her, how the red glow in her postcode came not from error, but from exhaust, that living near main roads drew invisible scars on lungs. She reached out as if to touch her own hope. "Thank you for showing me." It wasn't money, but it was why I kept going. One spring morning, 4 years after the church hall, I saw an open call for data-driven art for the Tate Modern's Living Cities program. I almost scrolled past. The odds were ridiculous, outlandish even for big dreamers. But I clicked through, uploaded a proposal, submitted the samples I was least ashamed of, and went back to frothing soy milk for men who didn't look up from their laptops. Weeks trickled by and the city moved on. Buses jammed up Bethnal Green Road, foxes screamed in backyards at 2 a.m. when the acceptance email finally arrived. It was so simply written I thought it was a prank. "We would like to commission an original installation, your proposal 1,000 heartbeats." My hands shook, I dropped my phone. The flat was empty except for the 2 nurses drying uniforms, swinging on plastic hangers like hopeful ghosts. I laughed and then I wept, sitting cross-legged on sticky liner. Building the piece nearly broke me. I measured the city's pulse, literally, through anonymized medical data and open-source health records, coded in infinite sleepless loops. I built a sculpture of glass tubes and digital sensors, a wall-long heartbeat, each pulse timed to Londoners' average heartbeats, surging when underground delays rose, faltering when pollution thickened in the air. The show opened in the summer just as the trees in Southwark turned an impossible green. The first day, big press badges hovered in the corners. People queued. They pressed hands to their chests as the sculpture's lights pulsed in time with the city, and one after another whispered astonishment as if they could see, for the first time, the sum of so many hidden rhythms in their home. I tried calling Mum. This time she picked up on the first ring. "Are you eating properly?" she said, but her voice was lighter than when we'd last spoken. "The Tate, Mum," I said. I heard a mug clatter in the background. "I'm exhibiting at the Tate Moderns." Long silence, then her breath caught. "What?" Another voice behind her, probably Auntie Sarah, the what Tina, and I heard footsteps. "Your cousin's art is at the Tate Modern." "That big building by the river," Mum said, not quite believing it herself, maybe not wanting to. I told her the date. She scribbled, she promised to come, and somehow news spread. Not just through the family, but through the grapevine of everyone who had ever wagered against me. On the day of the exhibition's community night, I almost didn't recognize St. Leonard's Hall crowd as they came, out of place, uncertain, awkwardly overdressed for a modern gallery swirling with European students in ripped jeans. My mother arrived with her sister. They stuck close together, arms tightly linked unless they'd fall over. Behind them swept Uncle Roy, hunching as if the ceiling were lower than it was, and Janine filming everything on her phone as if she was ticking a social influencer box. I stepped out from behind the sculpture just as one of the curators introduced me to the crowd. "This is Anissa Mirza, the creator of 1,000 Heartbeats, whose unique vision turns the city's big data into living, breathing art." Applause. I looked out and saw faces flushed from embarrassment, surprise, maybe a flicker of something like pride struggling to break the surface. Uncle Roy found his voice first. "So all these lights, you did them. All with what, those computers?" I led them forward. "Each beat you see is matched to thousands of Londoners' real-time heartbeat data," I explained. "When the city grows stressed, the light pattern speeds up. When it rests, they soften. Janine shook her head, her phone forgotten. You built this, Arnie. I nodded, designed it and coded it myself. The Tate bought it, I'm renting my own place now, no fundraisers required. A hiss of breath. Aunt Fiona, mouth-working, finally let herself see the piece, really see it. I didn't know something like this could be real, let alone in a museum. I watched them struggle to apply old disbelief to new evidence, like trying to staple water to a wall. We circled the installation. Mum's eyes went shining and soft when she realized that in the gallery booklet there was a photograph of us, me as a child, standing at her side at the old church hall, data prints scrawled across a blackboard. You said this would matter one day, I reminded her. Janine stepped closer. People pay you to do this. Tate pays, yes, but after this, a foundation in Germany wants my next project. I won their prize, actually. She blinked, stunned. Wow, Arnie. Uncle Roy quiet now. He looked at the crowds, the murmuring strangers, the photographers. His scowl softened and something else, awkward pride, maybe slipped in. Well, I'll be damned, he said at last. Looks like you showed us all, eh? I nodded but didn't gloat. I just let the feeling settle, a tide turning after a long winter, the first warmth after years of raw rain. It would be easier, perhaps, to say everyone was transformed, that one brilliant success turned doubters into boosters, that family became unwaveringly supportive, and that old friendships were repaired overnight. Real life is rarely so neat. Some remained guarded, fighting their own hearts to imagine a new world where art and numbers and stubborn hope could feed someone, let alone make them significant. Others softened gradually, apologies hidden in queries and invitations to family dinners I'd once resigned myself never to see again. But the moment stayed with me, etched as deeply as anything, the faces that doubted not only me but the life I could make, forced at last to witness my truth, concrete, illuminated, undeniable. Every beat of my city's heart there in glass and code, each pulse a testimony to reconstruction, not just of data or numbers, but of the self I had assembled from rejection and solitude. At the end of the night, as the crowds withdrew, Janine approached, uncertain. How do you start doing this? Do you think you could show me? She spoke as if broaching a fragile truce. I agreed, surprised by the quiet pride in my answer, understated but solid. Any time, you know where I live now. When I made my way home, the city had changed, or maybe I had. The rain off the river sparkled, reflected off the concrete and the Thames, and my own pulse for the first time in years felt perfectly in step with London's own. In the hush of my new flat, surrounded by the gentle ticking of code running on my laptop, I finally pressed play on Mum's backlog of voicemails, not out of guilt but from longing. Her anxious litany eased into words lighter and more deliberate. We miss you, Arnie. Hope you're well. Call when you can. Love you. Loss and reconstruction, a nation rebuilt from the smallest pieces. The world is made of data, yes. But it is made also of second chances, of forgiveness, of the possibility to return home not just successful, but whole. The proof glimmered in glass and code, and even more in the eyes that had once seen only failure, now reflecting something new. I slept finally beneath a window that gazed on the beating heart of the city, and in the silence I felt not the end, but the intricate, stubborn beginning of belonging.